Hi everyone, welcome to Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast, where I share lesson ideas, songs, games, and inspiring things for your elementary music classroom. My name is David Rao, and I am the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. This episode of the podcast is a replay containing the audio version of a Musical Mondays live video. If you're not familiar with Musical Mondays, every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I go live on Facebook and Instagram to share about the lessons that I'm using in class with my students. I give a recap of my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons, and then do a deep dive about one grade level and share the books, instruments, songs, and process that I use to teach the lesson to kids. This podcast episode contains all the audio from the Musical Mondays video, but if you'd like to see a replay of the video itself, you can find a link to the archived video on YouTube when you click the link in the notes for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here's the show. Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, a variety of places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm going to be sharing tonight about another lesson that I kind of developed with my student teacher as she was trying to come up and craft a lesson, and we talked through a lot of things, and I just thought it'd be cool and beneficial to talk through that process with y'all in case you're looking at creating your own lessons or you're just interested in the process or want to sort of see how that goes. So I'm going to be talking a little bit tonight about that process of creating the lesson. It's a lesson that includes non-pitched percussion instruments and also dynamics and rhythm reading. So that's going to be coming up in just a second. Before I get to that, if you hear about anything in this video that you're interested, the poem, the process, any of those things, you can find the links for all of those things on my blog, makemomentsmatter.org. There's also probably a link at the bottom of wherever you're watching, listening to this, where you can go directly there. But if you hear me talk about the links page, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, one more thing. If you're interested in doing elementary music ed training in person, I'm going to be at New Jersey Music Educators next week on Thursday and Friday. Come on out. I would love to see folks there. Also, I'm going to be at the Augusta Orff chapter. That is in March on the 23rd. So if you're around Augusta, Georgia, come and join us. Okay, so let's talk about this lesson. So this lesson, my student teacher wanted to create something that hit a couple different standards. We had been talking about how to plan a lesson, how to craft something together, and some of the ways that you could do that. And some of the things that we'd been focusing on were hitting the standards, keeping kids engaged, talking about movement so that kids aren't just stationary the whole time, so there's a little bit of movement, and trying to weave that all together in a lesson. So that's sort of the backstory to where this came from and why we're doing this. And so a couple of the standards that she was trying to hit was a familiarity with non-pitched percussion instruments, particularly talking about the different instrument families, so scrapers, shakers, woods, metals, and membranes. Those are the things she was doing. Sorry for my basset hound in the background who's trying to become apparently a staple of these weekly videos. I don't know. She's burrowing in, so sorry about that. Also, this is the first time I've ever tried live streaming on TikTok, so we'll see how that goes. My favorite part about it was I had to confirm my age. So it asked me to put in the date I was born, and then it was put your face in this scanner, and we're going to try and guess how old you are based by your age. So that was fun and humbling. Anyway, I'm trying TikTok live for the first time. We'll see if that happens again. So my student teacher was trying to come up with a lesson that included a couple different standards, and the standards she was trying to do were, again, non-pitched percussion instruments, so scrapers, shakers, woods, metals, membranes, to give kids exposure on the different instruments. She was also trying to incorporate, my students have just, in the pacing guide, talked about dynamics, specifically forte and piano, the difference between loud and quiet, and they were also trying to do a little bit of iconic notation. See, now Lucy's definitely trying to be a part of this video because she's in here coughing. Luce, chill out. Anyway, iconic notation, following that, and rhythm reading. Seriously? Lucy, stop. Okay, anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so, basset hounds, unpredictable, pooches. Anyway, so those were the plans of what she wanted to incorporate. So, how did she want to do that? So she was like, okay, well, we can do some rhythm reading, and we can incorporate rhythm reading on the instruments. And I was like, great. So how are you going to, is it just going to be straight rhythms? How are you going to hand out instruments? When are you going to hand out instruments? Because she's at the point in the student teaching where she's been in the room quite a bit. She spent a full day a week throughout the fall semester. So that was a lot of experience seeing things. We've talked a lot about the process of how you might want to come up with a lesson, how you might want to craft that, why you would maybe want kids to move, or how you want to hand out things. So we started asking the questions. And when I was talking with her about coming up with the lesson, there's sometimes where there will be lessons and then they will like fail or flop, and why. And so some of the fun things that you learn from that, like it's good to have a lesson that fails and flops, because then you learn like, okay, well, I shouldn't have handed this out right away, or I should have waited to do this, or I should have introduced this first. Why did and so the lesson that you're going to see today has had a couple revisions along the way, just so you're not like, wow, David's student teacher like immediately right away is so great. Well, yeah, she's great, but like we had a couple revisions, so this is like the end, how the lesson sort of turned out. But as we were talking about coming up with lessons, I was like, it's kind of like if you're going to, bake a cake or bake a loaf of bread or something. You have to have a recipe. You have to plan the steps that you're going to introduce things. You need to figure out when to mix. You need to figure out when to let it rest. You need to figure out, and some of that you can just follow the recipe. You can just write out a sequential list of like what you think is going to happen. And sometimes you have to have knowledge. So like, for example, if you're baking bread, if you've ever baked bread with yeast and you're like, oh, it says mix the yeast with water and let it sit. Warm water. How warm? Well, you want it to be warm but not hot. If it's too hot, it'll kill the yeast. How long do you let it sit? Well, it needs to sit for more than a minute. I mean, like some of that you just need to know, and if you don't read the recipe well, or if you don't know some of that, you just have to learn over time, and you have to learn through failure or learning from asking. So there's the recipe, right? And you know what your end goal is. It's going to be that cake or the bread or whatever, but you also have to learn along the way, like what are the things I need to do in the steps. But also because there was a time this week where my student teacher kept saying, read the rhythm, and kids weren't quite getting it. And I was like, they don't know that word yet. And so, you have to know. You have to think about your pantry. You have to think before you're going to bake that thing, what do you already have? What do you need to go get at the store? What do you need to, whip up or whatever before you can bake or create? So I think that's sort of a fun way to look at lesson planning, is think of it, is it you're making something, you're baking something. What is the process? Where do you start? What do you need? Do you need bowls? Do you need a mixing? Do you need to preheat the oven? All of these things you need to think about. So the lesson that we came up with, we talked about a lot of those things, and it's evolved over time. So what really inspired her was one of the things I said as we were looking through, what can you teach? What do you want to teach? Because you're teaching this grade next week. What do you want to do? And we talked about, well, here are some resources and here's some things you might use. And one of the books I shared was Mallet Madness by Artie Almeida. Great book. And she was looking through and looking at different lessons. And one of the ones that stuck out to her was this lesson on aleatoric music. And she just really liked this picture. And I was like, aleatoric music isn't really in the pacing guide right now. But she had also looked at it because it talked about timbre of woods, metals, and membranes, following the conductor going through the line. She's like, that's a cool picture, but like, how can we change that to make it work for what I want to do? And I was like, okay, great question. So we looked at the picture again, which is sort of a loopy, swoopy line, sort of a swirling line. And along the line are little rectangles or triangles or circles or whatever along the course of that line. And I was like, that's a cool idea. So like if you came along the line, if you drew a line, you came along the line, and as you're, you come to like a shape, a circle, a square, rectangle, one instrument has to play. But what are they going to play? And she was like, ooh, this is great. They could play a rhythm that we create. Awesome. Okay, so the beginning idea is there's going to be some sort of line or swoop or swoosh or something that you could follow with, a laser pointer or, one of those big pointy fingers or whatever. And whenever you get to one of those images, then you could play a given rhythm. I was like, great. Okay, so what rhythm are you going to play? Okay, and I was like, so we talked about, there are a couple things you could do. You could have a created rhythm. Like you could just have like rhythm cards, right? That you throw up or show up or what, throw up on the board or show to students or whatever. You could do that. Or, and then we talked about creating your own rhythm. So using like stick notation, tas and toddies. I have these little magnet, there's a back on it. It's really for like a photo. It's like a picture. It's a little plastic sort of picture frame, but it has magnets on the back. So I have a bunch of these. And so I use them sometimes for rhythms. They're just stick notation. So there's rests, there's tas, quarter notes, there's toddies, eighth notes. And then for older grades, there's 16th notes, takadimi. So with a bunch of these, you could very easily, put these together and then move them around however, whenever you want to do like a 4-beat pattern. That would be easy. And I was like, then each time you have them read, you could change it if you wanted. You could have a kid come and change their rhythm. That'd be a cool thing to do. Okay, great. So that was our plan. So it was like you're going to follow the line, and then when you get to that little image, someone is going to read a rhythm. Okay, great. And eventually, hopefully, get to non-pitched instruments. So the first time we did it, the first time she did it, she had them go along line, and she handed out instruments. And the first time they got to a little thing, certain kids would play or whatever. And it worked okay. And then it was like, how do they rotate through the instruments? Well, she kind of had a plan of how she would rotate one line to the next or whatever. But how could that work better? Okay, so we were like, well, what else could we do? Okay, so in my classroom, I have 4 lines on the floor. And I use them all the time for folk dance. It's just like 4 parallel lines. One is red, one is blue, one is green, one is yellow. And I use them for classroom management. I use them for, all sorts of stuff, especially folk dancing. That's really nice. But kids can sit on them, right? So sitting on the line, working in those spots, one line, what we thought was, instead of just having icons, instead of just a triangle or circle or square, whatever, why not have kids sit on 3 of those lines, 3 of the 4 lines, the green, the blue, the red. And why not have like the triangle be red and the circle be blue and the square be whatever the third color was, I didn't quite say. Let's see, hold on. Okay, it's really fun trying TikTok live for the first time. And having fun, like, never had spam on there before. That's cool. Anyway, so what if the circles and things were colored to match the colors in the room? Sorry, TikTok's being weird. First time doing this. It's fun having trolls. No. Anyway. Okay. So, so when the kids would get to a triangle, it would not just be a triangle, but it'd be red. So then, all the kids in the red line would do the rhythm. Okay, and then when it gets to like the blue circle, whatever, all the kids who are blue, or on the blue line would get to play a rhythm. Okay, great. So we also talked about how handing out the instruments the very first time worked fine, but what if when you taught the lesson, the first time you went through it, you just did clapping or patting, or just reading the rhythm? Instead of handing out instruments right away, which got loud fast, instead, why don't you just read the rhythm first? And so then kids would also get a chance to try out the know which line is theirs before they had an instrument in their hand. So when you did add instruments into their hands, they would be able to already know the process of, okay, when I see the green triangle, I got to play my instrument or whatever. And so it'd make it a little bit simpler in the process once you've handed out the instrument. Okay, great. So let's try that. And so then I said, okay, so you want to add a rotation. Yes. Well, the rotation one day when we tried it was really loud. I was like, what if we added a poem so that when they got to the poem, when they got to the rotation, you could just say the poem. They would know, oh, this is the time when we're going to rotate, and then they would rotate to the new instrument and we would try it all again. Great. Okay. So that was going to be something that was added in, which, by the way, I'm going to get to the full process of the whole lesson, like front to end in a minute, but I want to talk through this process of how it was created. Then, so the plan was, okay, there's this winding line. There are different shapes along the line. They're color-coded to match the colored lines in my room so that kids knew exactly when they were going to play. Then, as we're going along, we're going to read rhythm, and the kids, we could move, change, create these rhythms as we wanted using the movable cards with the magnet backs on the whiteboard. But the one more thing that she wanted to do was dynamics. And I was like, okay, so how are you going to do that? She's like, well, they could play loud or quiet on their instrument. Great. Okay. So if they're going to do that, how are they going to know to do that? And we played around with making the images large and small. We played around with adding an F or a P onto the image to identify that it is forte or piano. And that's kind of where we ended up. So let me take you through the lesson then, how she taught it. And you can sort of see the images we use and see the process that we used. It's going to take me a second to get this image pulled up so you can sort of see what I have been talking about. So let me flip over to this image. Hold on, Instagram. Let me try and flip you around here so you can see a little better. Okay, sorry about the ring light. Okay, let me see if I can flip TikTok around. I don't know if I can do that. Can I do that? I may just have to turn the camera around like old school because I don't know how to flip. I had not played around with this. Mirror your video. Oh, there we go. Flip camera. Okay. Sorry for this, everyone. It's the very first time I've tried doing this on TikTok. Okay. And maybe the last because they're like trolls. Anyway, okay. So on the screen, hopefully you can see, there's the light blue line is the line that kids would follow. So we would follow, like with the cursor or whatever, with the cursor or whatever, or using a finger, we'd go through, and kids could read along the line. So the very first time, purple was everyone. The green square was the green line kids. The blue circle was the blue line kids, and the red triangle was the red line kids. And we put up a rhythm, ta 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 dee ta or whatever, on the side of the whiteboard next to this image. So when the cursor or the counter or whatever got to the purple, all kids said ta 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 dee ta. When I got to the green, only the kids on the green line. When I got to the blue, only the kids on the blue line. When I got to the red, only the kids on the red line. And then purple again to end was everyone. Then so that worked pretty well. We did a couple of practices of that with different rhythms, things like that, so that kids knew they could play when they play. Oh my gosh, I even said the thing about the poem, and I forgot to tell you what the poem was. We pulled out a couple books. We looked online, found a poem about the ocean that was pretty short, pretty easy, that kids could do. It goes like, this is the sea, the wavy sea. Here is a boat, and here is me. And I've linked that on the links page if you're interested. It's just a quick, simple little poem. I actually looked it up. It is a song that, if you're from Australia, I'm so sorry, because I know that it's like a song that I think is semi-popular, but we definitely don't sing it or use the rhythm from the poem from Australia. So I'm very sorry about that. Okay, so this is the line they would do. And once they did it, they would say the poem and rotate around so that you would move basically to a new instrument. Then we handed out instruments. So we did it once with rhythms, not saying here, we're going to use instruments. We did not mention that at all. We just did it as a rhythm. They didn't know instruments were coming. Well, then instruments came. Wood instruments went to the purple or to the green line. Metal instruments went to the blue line, and shaker instruments went to the red line. So instruments like wood blocks, tone blocks for the woods. Metals was agogo bells, gonkokuis, and I can't remember the third one. Maybe a triangle. I can't remember another one. And then shakers. There was a shaker there were shaker eggs, things like that, that we used. So then, as we went, using a little pointer, they went along. When it got to the green line, which was woods, played, and then red was shaker instruments on the red line, blue, and then through, and then purple was the end. And we did a couple different versions of that. The line kind of changed. So, it'd be a different order or whatever, but kids had to know, when you play, what do you play? And then we'd say the poem and they'd rotate, so they'd get another chance at that. Here's another example, just another line. This was something that she created on her iPad, using a sketching program. And we played around with it a little bit, so it was easy for the kids to see on the board and easy pretty much to follow. But again, just when they went through, it was either, up at the board with your finger or a yardstick or whatever. Right now I'm using the accessibility feature on my iPad to show you the little floating dot thing. But you could use, a laser pointer. You could use your actual hand, whatever you wanted to show where you were in the, on the line. So as you're going through. And actually, I think that she developed a little repetitive pattern. She said, so the green kids would be like, ta-dee-ta, ta-dee-ta, follow the wave, and here we go. And the next one. So it really was not aleatoric in that, like, whenever the dot got there. But that was because they were, saying a rhythm together. So they kind of had to have a phrase to get them started. So, like, you could be like, ready, ready, here you go. So they all start together. But she said, like, follow the wave, and here we go, or whatever. You could do, since it's like an ocean theme, you could say whatever you wanted. Okay, so then we did one where this was a little different. After the kids had several experiences playing the instruments with the different colors, with the different images, then we did now on the screen are some triangles that are very small and some that are very big. Some squares that are very small, some are very big. Same with the hearts and the circles and the different colors. This is like a precursor to doing loud and quiet. Just not naming the piano and forte yet. So when kids went through, when they got to the very large purple heart, everyone played whatever rhythm we had given them. Ta-dee, ta-dee, ta, ta. But loud. Then the next one is a small blue circle. So then whoever's on the blue line did ta-dee, ta-dee, ta, ta. But very small. And the red one's ta-dee, ta-dee, ta, ta. So each little symbol you got to were small. Then the next time we actually labeled. Here's another example of small and large, different images. But eventually, oh my gosh, here's another one because they rotated, so they got to do loud and quiet on every instrument. Then we labeled with the symbol for forte, just a letter F, or a P for piano. And so they went through and they got to have experienced that where the large, we had named it forte and piano, and they got to go through and play. Again, this was with non-pitched instruments, so they got to do it within reason. You can only play the woodblock so loud before you are breaking eardrums and people's ears. Same with cowbells and go-go bells and whatever. So we said, yes, it's loud within reason. And then the very last one, and this is my favorite, all of the images are the same size. So the heart, the square, the triangle, the circle, they're all the same size, except some are labeled with a P and some with an F. So now, instead of giving them the image, like a large image to show loud, it just is the label. So now they have to really know F means forte, which means loud. P means piano, which means quiet. They have to know that because if they're going to play correctly, they have to read the label, they have to know it's their turn, and they have to be able to play loud or quiet. Again, with whatever given rhythm we did. And all of our rhythms were either quarter notes, eighth note pairs, or rests. So this became a really interesting lesson by the time we were done, that they had to know when they played. It was playing in small groups. We were identifying whether they could play the rhythm correctly, and we were identifying whether they were playing loud or quiet. It really built up. I mean, the very first thing they had was just icons on a line, right? Just a few icons, like 3 or 4, and then it was, each group got to play twice, and then they got more involved. And so as you went, though, the icons then went from just a bunch of icons, just playing a rhythm, to large and small icons, so that they play loud or quiet. And then labeling with the F or the P. There were several examples of that. And then finally, no large or small icons, just labeling with F for forte, P for piano. Okay, let me see if I can turn this back around, and I'll talk a little bit about how it went. Okay. Let's see if I can turn you around, Instagram. Sorry. Okay, so the lesson went honestly very well. Like by the time we're done, by the, the last time we did it. The first couple times though, because it was a brand new thing and because it had never really been tried quite like this, it was interesting. And every time she'd finish the lesson, I'd say, great, how did you feel? What did you like about that? What did you think you could maybe change? Where did you find that there were parts that were so much fun? Where did you find times where you were stressed or kids seemed like they didn't quite know what they need to do next? What can we do to simplify? How can we how can we make this more elemental, more simple, more exciting for kids? What do we need to do? And so it changed quite a lot over time. It's like the first time there was just a line with squares, circles, triangles in just like random colors or all the same color, something like that. And after that first lesson, she was like, they weren't quite knowing when they needed to do it. And I was like, as I had started teaching that lesson, I was like, why don't you make the different images the color of the line they're sitting on? And for both of us, it was like, oh my gosh, yes, why not? So then the next time it got a little bit easier. And then we just tweaked, added things along the way. I was like, I think that you could do a few more examples. So she made a couple more slides of different, swoops with images in different places. And it just evolved and got better over time. So that as we were doing it, the lesson got more intricate and more interesting and more chances for kids to explore. Could you do this with a different level? Absolutely. Could it be for younger kids? Totally. Could it be for older kids if you change maybe the rhythm, added like 16th notes or something? Absolutely. Do you need the little poem in between? No, but was it a fun and easy thing? Yes. And kids, once they learned that the poem meant rotate, as soon as she said, this is the C, the wavy C, they all started speaking and they all started switching and they knew which way they needed to rotate by the time we got there. I think it became more successful when we decided, okay, we're going to try the rotation with reading the rhythm and following the map without instruments. The first day we did it with instruments right away, not good. But the second day when you did it without instruments, it was so much easier and so much better. And it was very fun because by the end of, now we're at the end of the week, we sat down after my student teacher taught that lesson today, and I was like, how's it going? How is it different from when you first taught this lesson? Is it what you wanted it to be? Is it assessing the things you wanted it to? Is it teaching the things you wanted it to? Is it reinforcing the things you wanted it to? And it's really shown both of us a lot, and has given some really great moments for kids to try things and explore and have fun, but also reinforce a lot of the concepts. And it's also really taught my student teacher some of the things about how, when you craft a lesson, what does that look like? What do you have to know ahead of time? What do the kids have to know? It's been a really sort of a cool process. Anyway, this is it's a new lesson. If you want to try something like this, if you do try something like this, please leave a comment and say like, hey, I tried a version of that and it worked really well, or that was cool, but I didn't want to use the ocean poem. I'd rather use a poem about the jungle or poem about bedtime or whatever. Please leave that in the comments or send me an email at makemomentsmatter@gmail.com to let me know like, hey, I tried that, but I did this thing differently. It'd be really cool. Or I paired it with a book. There are a lot of cool things you could do if you want it. Okay, well, that's all for this week. I hope this gave you some ideas that you could use in your classroom if you wanted, or gave you some thoughts about how you could do a lesson similar to this. If you want to hear more, there are a bunch of old Musical Monday videos for the last 5 years. You can go back and see more if you're interested. Or you can check out my blog, makemomentsmatter.org. There are a lot of things there too if you're looking for more lessons and more ideas. Or you can come and join us at New Jersey Music Educators next week. I hope to see a lot of folks out there. If you are listening to this, watching this, and you see me at New Jersey, please come say hi. I know 2 people there, so I would love to meet people in person. Come and say hi. Okay, that's all for this week. I'll see y'all next week. Have a great night, everyone. Bye.